How many nuclear weapons, by the way, does Russia have? Do you know?
Many.
Many.
Can you hear me up there?
Has taken a terrible toll on Ukrainian lives.
The South Florida Congresswoman supporting a no-fly zone.
The images of what I saw when I went to Surfside, they don't leave your mind.
Lawmakers go home without fixing corroding condos. No more end-of-year testing.
This will take hours, not days, and it will reduce overall testing time dramatically.
The governor's happy, teachers' unions are not.
This is not innovation.
Illegal fentanyl has made its way into the drug supply.
Fentanyl killing thousands in Florida, most in Broward. The big stories of the week, all live on This Week in South Florida. Good morning, welcome. I'm Michael Putney. Glenna has the day off. We have got a lot on our plate today, so let's get right to it. Starting with the South Florida Congresswoman who got into a verbal spat this week with Fox's Tucker Carlson. Miami Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar likes to mix it up, so does Fox's Tucker Carlson, and there were fireworks when she went on his show Wednesday night. It was a verbal sparring match. Back and forth they went. He wanted to know why she supports a no-fly zone in Ukraine and why she isn't worried about possibly setting off World War III. She said the U.S. has to stand up to bullies like those in Cuba and Venezuela. And the congressman from Miami now joins us live from West Palm Beach, where she made an appearance this morning. Congresswoman, great to see you. How are you?
Doing well. Wonderful to be with you always. You know how much I respect you. That's why I'm here this early in the morning.
Yeah. Well, it's always good to see you, too. We've known each other for roughly 30 years. All right. I think
Yes.
the opening question here has to be is that you told this outfit, the Gray Zone in Washington, that you supported a no-fly zone, and you sort of said you wanted to clarify that with Tucker Carlson. Do you support a no-fly zone in Ukraine?
Michael, what I support is not to take the no-fly zone off the table. Because when you are telegraphing or you're telling tyrants what is it that you're going to do or not do, then you embolden them. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Look at those images. We are, the free world, the international community is witnessing the decimation of a whole country that did not provoke Russia.
Yeah.
We know what Vladimir Putin means.
Right. But so what you are saying is, let's not say we will never use a no-fly zone or impose one,
Of course.
you know, so that we have at least a whole card that we could play if it came to that. But on the other hand, the Pentagon, the president, most members of Congress with you say that a no-fly zone would be a provocation that would cause World War III and possibly cause Putin to unleash nuclear weapons. What's your answer to that?
And I understand, and that is very true. And I think the Biden administration is trying, hasn't shown the leadership that I would like them to show. But what they're trying is not to incur or not to get into World War III. Of course, we know that. No one wants to go to another war. But then at the same time, we are the leaders of the free world. We need to be leading the way, and we need to be sending messages, very strong messages to Vladimir Putin that he needs to stop the carnage,
Well, but
something that he hasn't.
We understand,
in the last
but
few
isn't
hours,
that,
let me just...
isn't that, I'm sorry, isn't that exactly what President Biden has been doing for the last 4 weeks? He rounded up all the members of NATO, the European Union. You know, the allies are stronger right now. NATO's stronger than it's been in decades, and they are all lined up against Putin. And Joe Biden had a big role in doing that, didn't he?
Too late. We should have given the Javelins, the Stingers, the MiG-29s, the S-300s, the X-400s to S-400 to the Ukrainians months ago, when we knew that they were gathering all those 200,000 troops around the Ukrainian border. I'm not saying that now we're running, but Putin is dictating the terms. Let me just tell you, and I'm sure you know about this, they just dropped, the Russians dropped a hypersonic missile first time in the history of the world, first time in a war that a power throws, and for those that have not read up on it, those are very high-speed missiles, 4,000 miles per hour. Very difficult to shoot them down. So what are we going to do if that continues? What are we going to do, we meaning the free world, the United States, if Vladimir Putin decides to throw a chemical weapon at the Ukrainians?
Yeah.
What are we going to do?
Well,
And that's the big question. That question has been posed to other lawmakers, and they have been saying, well, let's see, maybe then we will impose a no-fly zone. Why should we wait for that minute? You and I know, and the audience that is watching me, which is so dear to me because that's home, your audience and my constituents, we know that when you blink in front of a tyrant, things get very complicated. So it's better to send the right message right from the get-go that we're not going to play ball with you. And that's not what happened with this administration. I'm not saying that it's an easy position, but I do say that we are the leaders of the free world. Why can't we send the MiG-29s that Zelensky begged us to Congress to send him a few days ago? Why aren't we sending more drones, the Turkish drones? Why aren't we doing more? Why the CIA cannot
excuse me, but in fact,
Tell
I mean, I have read that, you know, of the $800 million worth of military aid the president authorized late this week, in addition to the $14 billion going to Ukraine, that there is a wide variety, including surface-to-air missile systems and drones and all kinds of equipment. I mean, I think that the administration seems to be doing its best and has been at this kind of task ever since Russia seized Crimea in 2014.
Not enough. Otherwise, Vladimir Putin would have not invaded in such a ruthless way. What he's doing, he would have not invaded Ukraine. I do believe that if we would have sent the right messages right before the invasion, probably he would have thought about it twice. Why don't we send the MiGs? Why don't we allow the Polish to give the MiGs to the Ukrainian pilots? Zelensky said it, and Zelensky asked for the no-fly zone. I understand the repercussions. I understand that that's a very big word. But at the same time, we cannot take that off the table.
All right. Well, when you were speaking with Tucker Carlson the other night, you said just give Zelensky the MiG-29s because his pilots know how to fly those planes. They don't know how to fly American jet fighters. But,
Russian.
you know, the Pentagon says, how do you get those MiGs to Ukraine? Do you send them through some intermediate U.S. base or NATO base in Germany? I mean, that's just simply a fig leaf. Putin would know where those planes came from, and he would consider that an act of aggression.
Up with it, he can consider an act of aggression what we're sending right now. The javelins, the stingers, all the military equipment that you just mentioned that was in the $800 million military aid to Ukraine. So he could consider, the thing here is that, and I'm glad that you point this out, is that now Vladimir Putin could consider anything or nothing a military provocation. So why not the new stingers? Why can't we then say to him, this hypersonic missiles that you have been launching in the last hours, this is a provocation against NATO. You see, this is all perception and not reality. And if you read all the analysis, it's like the whole administration is trying to figure out what would Vladimir Putin think that it's a provocation and escalatory, which is now, you know, is the word in fashion. The escalatory. Only Vladimir Putin will determine that. And that's the game we cannot fall into, because then the tyrant, these thugs are the ones dictating to the free world how to behave. Yeah. In the meantime, look at the Ukrainians. And, you know, we Cubans, I feel that we're all Ukraine, and I'm sure you do too, Michael. Because going back to your audience, Cubans know what the Russians do. The Russians penetrated Cuba silently. They're doing it vociferously in Ukraine.
We remember
but it's the same
Cuban
penetration.
Yeah,
it's the same wanting to steal everything from you.
Believe me, you don't need to remind us of the Cuban Missile Crisis. I lived through it. I remember it. I mean, the world came that close to nuclear war, and thank God it didn't. And what they're trying to do now is prevent it
But why
in
did
fact-
that happen? Because JFK blinked during Pay of Pigs. And that's why Fidel said, oh, this is not a bad opportunity for me to put some missiles on that little island. And I agree that at that time, thank God we did not have a nuclear war. But that's what happens when you blink. And right now, and I believe that I think we should mention this, and I'm sure that you agree.
Are you
if
saying
we, the
that
free
Joe
world,
Biden
believe that this may
Maria
be the
Elvira,
last confrontation with it?
Yeah. Are you saying that Joe Biden is somehow blinking right now, before Vladimir Putin? Is he
I
blinking?
think that Vladimir Putin feels that Joe Biden is a weak leader, and that we waited too long to act. I do believe, and many people in Congress believe the same thing, that if months ago, when we saw the surge of Russian troops around the Ukrainian border, if we would have said to Zelensky, what is it that you need, we're going to give it to you, probably we would not be in this situation, and the Ukrainians would not have 4 million, not only the dead and the carnage. You've seen those images. It makes you sick. Makes you sick. And how do you think we feel, the House Foreign Affairs Committee, knowing that we are the free world? How do you think I feel? I'm very good friends with Victoria Sparks. And we became friends at the beginning of the term, and because she lived socialism and my parents lived it. So we have something in common. We know what socialism, Marxism, communism does to people, destroys them. So that's the reason I got elected, and you know that.
There's nobody around here, nobody that we know. There's nobody that we know who's going to say a good word on behalf of socialism or communism or Marxism.
Right.
So, Maria Elvira Salazar, hold your place. Don't go away. We've got more questions for you in just a minute. We're glad you're with us this morning. We are speaking with Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar, Republican, who represents the 27th Congressional District, most of Miami along the coast and Miami Beach. Congresswoman, you just said that President Biden has been weak. He did call Putin a war criminal this week. He gave Zelensky $14 billion, in aid. What could he do to show that he is not weak?
I think we answered this before. He should have shown resolve way before Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine.
Well, he was sounding the alarm.
Another type of president.
Hold on, I'm sorry. For a month, 5-6 weeks before the invasion, the American intelligence actually did a phenomenal job. They said Russia is going to invade. Mr. Biden talked to all the NATO countries. They doubted the truth of that. They didn't think he was going to invade. But the alarm was sounded by Joe Biden, and they were sending in armaments to Ukraine. So it's not as if he sat back and did nothing.
Michael, I love your opinion, but I have sat in different, and I respect it, and I respect you highly as a journalist. That's why I'm here for 2 segments. But I do not agree with what you just said. I sat at different classified briefings, which obviously I cannot share with you the info, but I can share with you the spirit or the perception that I walked out of from those briefings is that we, the United States, were acting very weakly.
Right.
We could have done a lot more. We could have sent the message. We could have sent more, like I said, more military weaponry.
All right. Well,
equipment, armament to that border with Poland, with Romania, and Turkey. We could have beefed it up big time and then send the message to Vladimir Putin, be careful, because look what I just amassed around your house. But I just want to say something else about the no-fly zone, and I do understand, and I'm not a warmonger. I believe that is peace through strength. The no-fly zone has been established 3 times in history, and it has worked the 3 times. Because when the thugs know that they're going to be confronting the leader of the free world, they think about it twice.
Yeah, but
and
wait
I
a minute.
leave you, and I pose you, and I leave you with this question. What are we going to do as the United States, the leader of the free world,
wait a minute.
if Vladimir Putin sent a chemical weapon against
Excuse me,
Ukrainians?
Congresswoman. peace through strength. What should happen if a NATO jet, whether it's French or Italian or from Holland or the United States, goes up in the no-fly zone, encounters a Russian jet fighter, and they get into a dogfight, and our plane is shot down, or we shot down the Russians? You know, isn't that really...
What about the opposite?
Isn't that the
What about the
beginning
opposite?
of
What
World
about
War
if-
III?
No.
It's
Of
not?
course, but then what? Let me put. Now, what I'm saying is that I understand that's a possible scenario. What about this other scenario? What about if Vladimir Putin hears the message and doesn't fly any more planes?
You think he's going to
Which is
shrink
what
back?
happened the
I mean,
last
do you
three-
honestly think Vladimir Putin is going to say, oh my goodness, they've got their jets up there, I'm just not going to fly mine in there anymore?
Your guess is as good as the Biden administration. No one really knows, but I do know that the empirical evidence shows, that history shows, that the last 3 times, the only 3 times a no-fly zone has been imposed, it has worked.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question, Congresswoman, and you are a member House Foreign Affairs Committee, so you are privy to information journalists don't have, and I acknowledge that. What is the end game here? Zelensky spoke to you and other members of Congress this week. He asked for armaments, he asked for humanitarian help, he asked for a no-fly zone, but his people are now negotiating, reportedly having peace talks with Russian counterparts. What should be the end game here for him, and what should the United States do to help stop the fighting?
I believe, and this is my own personal opinion, that whatever Zelensky negotiates, we should honor. They are the ones under the bullets, not us. We should help them. And if they believe that they need to negotiate, and those are the terms of the agreement, so be it. Again, that's a hypothetical question. So what we know right now is that the Russians are sending the hypersonic missiles. We know that Zelensky does not have the MiG-29s. We know that he doesn't have the drones that he needs from Turkey. We know that the CIA could be doing the same thing, that military convoy, that we could be sending more armament that we are not doing right now, what we did in Afghanistan. So there are still a few different things that we can do it from the military point of view that we are not doing, because the Biden administration fears the escalatory mode, or he doesn't want escalate, which I understand, but that's a very thin line.
Okay.
And I thought we were going to talk about immigration.
Well, I'm sad to say that we are out of time. I want to say you are the sponsor of the Dignity Bill, and the next time you're with us, we will talk about the bill. Appreciate your time this morning very much. All right, Maria.
My love to you and the
Salazar.
audience. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're quite welcome. All right, next, changes to school testing is testing the patience of Florida teachers, why they are again going against Governor DeSantis. That is next. In the midst of all the other big news that happened this week, you might have missed this story, but the teachers of Florida, they did not. Governor Ron DeSantis on Tuesday signed into law a bill that puts an end to the big final end-of-year exams that students in Florida have taken for years, the FSA. But from now on, instead of the FSA, the Florida Student Assessment Exam, students in grades 3 through 10 are going to be taking the Florida Assessment of Student Thinking, or FAST test. Consists of testing 3 times a year. The governor likes it, predicts it's going to produce better results, less anxiety, and less testing. But Florida teachers' unions disagree. Carole Gauronskas is vice president of the Florida Education Association. She joins us now live from St. Augustine. Carole, good morning. Glad to see you.
Good morning, Michael. I'm happy to be here.
All right. So the governor says, hey, this is the greatest thing since the number 2 pencil for education. What do you say?
Well, I say that back in September, we were, excited to hear that the governor wanted to eliminate the FSA and to reduce testing for students. However, what was passed this last session is not that answer. Instead, we have increased testing. We've removed 1 end-of-year exam, and we put in 3 progress monitoring exams. So by my math, we've now added 2 tests to a student's plate from 3rd to 10th grade, or 3rd to 12th grade.
All right. Well, I have not read the bill, I confess, but on the other hand, I'm a little confused. What is a progress monitoring exam? Is that sort of a test light, or what is it?
So it's what we already do in almost every district, if not all districts. When the students arrive in August, we do an exam, a first progress monitoring exam. We get that data. We work with that data if we've got the planning time to make sure that each child is their needs are met. We do it again in January, and now we have to do it again in May. The districts already do this progress monitoring. Teachers invented progress monitoring. But now the governor has said that we need to do it 3 times per the state. So that's 3 district exams, 3 state exams, but no additional time for teachers to be able to review all of that data. So we are a little disappointed in the fact that we did not reduce testing. We have actually, in fact, increased testing on our students.
Yeah. Carole, we know that Carla Hernandez-Mance, the head of the Teachers Union, the United Teachers of Dade, and Anna Fusco from Broward, they have both spoken out against this. But what are individual teachers telling you? Are they saying, look, you know, I've got a system, seems to work pretty well, but now I'll actually be testing my students more and having to prepare them more? What do they say?
Well, that's exactly it. And they've not been given the additional time to review all of that data. That data per each student, you've got, 18 to 26 children in every class. When are you supposed to review that data? If the bill had only said to us, let's eliminate district testing, it might have helped. But I'm certainly against having a teacher review 6 exams throughout a year when they're already doing their own progress monitoring in the classroom every week. We invented it, as I said. And so I agree with Anna and Carla. This is not what teachers wanted. They were very excited, as we were, in September when the governor did state that we were going to lessen the amount of testing. Listen, we all know we've been testing for 20 odd years in the state of Florida. And in all that time, our 3rd graders have not gotten above a 50%, reading at grade level. Can you only imagine if we had taken all of that testing time and given it back to the teachers, and that would have allowed them to actually teach the students in their classroom versus test the students in their classroom?
Yeah, those 3rd grade test results for reading particularly are really dismal, and we've been waiting for them for at least 20 years that we've been doing this to step up. So I guess the question, Carole, is the teachers of Florida, your folks, are going to have to do this at least for the next school year. If it doesn't seem to work out very well, the legislature, Senator Manny Diaz and other leaders in this area, they've imposed this. How do you change things around and show them, if it doesn't work, to change it back?
Well, I don't know that there's any changing back. Those that are in charge are telling us we need to test more, not less, based on the law that they have passed. I think what really is going to make a difference, obviously, are parents. Parents being involved in saying, wait, you promised us less testing, but you've given us more testing. We see this in the area of the teacher shortage. We've been testing, as I said, for 20 plus years. And each year we've seen teachers just leave the profession. We have been told by the Florida Department of Ed that come June, there will be a 9,000 teacher shortage in the state of Florida. And we're currently working between a 4,500 and 5,000 education staff professional shortage in this state. Well, testing has driven teachers away from the profession. They can't teach. And if you can't teach, that's what you went into this field for. You loved teaching, not testing.
No, I understand. Well, that's a scary prospect, losing even more teachers than we're losing right now. Carole Gauronskas, thank you so much for being with us, and we'll stay on top of this, see what happens in the coming year.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael.
Sure enough. All right, up next, a South Florida lawmaker who tried to get legislation passed to tighten up regulation laws on condo safety, but couldn't get it across the finish line. He will join us next. When something catastrophic happens in the state of Florida and new laws and regulations could repair or at least mitigate the damage, the state legislature almost always takes action. They did that with stricter gun laws after the massacre at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High. But after the catastrophic collapse of the Champlain Towers South last summer, lawmakers once again said they would pass a bill to help prevent such tragedies happening in the future, but they didn't. They came very close, but they could not push it across the finish line. State Representative Daniel Perez of Westchester and Miami-Dade was the primary sponsor of the bill in the House, and he joins us now live. Representative Perez, Danny, great to see you. How are you?
Hey, Mr. Putney, thanks for having me as always. I'm doing well.
That's all right. And please, Michael on this end is perfectly fine. So explain to us, I know you and Senator Jennifer Bradley over in the Florida Senate tried very hard and came close. Why couldn't you get this bill passed?
Unfortunately, Michael, we had been working on this piece of legislation for many months, but when it came towards the end, the negotiations stalled. Specifically in the Florida House, we passed unanimously, bipartisan support, Republicans and Democrats, without a no vote. We passed a very aggressive reform of condominiums and condominiums association. When we sent that over to the Senate wasn't as palatable as we were in the House on making such an aggressive change. And so once the Senate received the House version, it was essentially gutted, and it was replaced with solely the recertification language, which changes the amount of years that a condominium has to receive a certification from 40 years to less. It depends on how far they were from the ocean, but it could have been 30 or 25 years. But the House version was passed off the House floor.
Yeah. Well, as I understand it, current Florida law allows condo association boards to waive the requirement that they hold money in reserve for building repairs. And you wanted to make sure, I take it, you and your House colleagues wanted to take away the ability to waive that so that the repairs would be made. Is that right?
That's exactly right, Michael. We did not want the associations to have the ability to waive reserves, specifically when it came to the structural integrity of a building, of a condominium. If an association wanted to not collect the money for the landscaping in front of their welcome gate, well, so be it. But the structural integrity of a building should never be compromised. And so we did give associations 3 years, not only to perform the reserve study of exactly how much was going to have to be recuperated, but we were also going to give them 3 years to recuperate the money themselves. But that wasn't something that the Senate was willing to take up.
Yeah. As I recall, the Champlain Towers South had let maintenance go for many years, maybe 30 years, and the engineering company they hired estimated that the structural repairs were going to cost in the vicinity of $15 million. It would have been per unit, I guess, in the vicinity of $500,000, an assessment of $500,000. I mean, that's the situation that you really want to avoid. I mean, number one, that you have damage that severe, and number two, that the repairs are just too expensive.
And the only way you can avoid that is you hold the association accountable, you hold the CAMs accountable, and you make sure that they're collecting the necessary amounts of money from the unit owners over many years, as opposed to waiting until the last minute and hitting the unit owner with an assessment of $500,000. We were trying to avoid exactly what you just explained, and we were so gracious that we actually gave them 3 years to the associations for them to begin to recuperate the funds. But without that hardcore language in the bill, what's going to happen is associations are going to continue to waive reserves. Even if the threshold was 99% of unit owners have to agree to waive reserves in order for an association to do so, it doesn't matter. The association is going to get the required votes in order for there to not be an assessment or an increase in their monthly association fees. And we have to hold the associations accountable at some point. And I was hoping that would have started this session. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to come back stronger, harder, and faster next year to make sure that the House and the Senate together pass meaningful legislation with regards to Surfside.
Yeah. You know, I think we should insert at some point here, for people who don't follow the legislature, that the lobby for condominium owners and associations in the state of Florida is just a huge force, lots of money. They have a law firm, and I'm not speaking in any derogatory manner, but the Becker Poliakoff firm in Broward County, sort of wrote the Florida condo laws for the last 20 or 30 years. How do you break that kind of power grip that they have on condominium laws and reforms?
Yeah, but look, Michael, I'll be very honest with you. I'm not the greatest ally of the lobby corps, and I take that as a badge of honor. But I wouldn't blame this on Becker Poliakoff. I wouldn't blame this on a certain lobby corps or a certain lobby group. I wouldn't blame this failure on that. I would simply say that I think the potential burden on homeowners is something that influenced the Senate a lot more than it influenced me, regardless of who was lobbying for it.
Yeah.
And look, I worked very closely with Senator Bradley, and she did a very good job of working hard to make sure that we can have a product that Floridians would be proud of. But unfortunately, we both fell short.
Yeah. Well, I just want to make clear for the record here, I'm not blaming Becker Poliakoff either. I mean, they are a competent, large, powerful firm. They do a good job for their clients. Danny Perez, let me ask you, right now there are 1.5 million condo units in Florida. 131,000 of those units are in buildings that are 20 to 30 years old, and only Miami-Dade and Broward and a few individual cities require regular inspections and certification after 40 years. So are those people in jeopardy right now?
Here's the good thing, Michael. The good thing is in Miami and Broward County and many other counties, the recertification language is already changing, and it is being lowered by the county commissioners. But for those counties that aren't having their commissioners aggressively push reform when it comes to the recertification of a condominium, many of the mortgage holders of these condominiums are now forcing recertification exams sooner than the 40 years. Some are actually now requiring reserve studies mandatory every 3 or 5 years,
right.
Which some condominiums have never had a reserve study done, or at least have not had it abided by once it's been completed.
Yeah.
But those changes are happening just because of the concern that took place after Surfside, naturally.
We understand. So I guess bottom line here is you came that close to passing your bill this year. It seems to be a big gap between you and how the Senate feels. Can you get it done next year?
Yeah, look, I think we can get it done next year. We weren't that far off, Michael. I think the version that the Senate passed off the House floor after they placed an amendment and the version that was passed off the House floor, those two versions look very, very far apart. But during negotiations, we were actually a lot closer. But at the end, what was resolved to by the Senate was a simpler version of mine, which only had the recertification language, and we weren't willing to take that up.
Yeah. Representative Danny Perez, great to speak with you. Thank you for your time this morning, and good luck getting this bill through in the next session of the legislature next 9 months from now.
Yes, thank you, Michael, and happy Sunday to everyone watching.
Thank you very much. Okay. Up next, we're going to focus on a really bad drug problem in South Florida, mainly in Broward County. It's fentanyl, and it is killing people. There is an epidemic going on in the state of Florida, and we are not talking about COVID-19. It is an epidemic of fentanyl, the synthetic opioid that is about 100 times more powerful than morphine. Drug dealers are mixing it with cocaine, and the results are deadly. You remember recently that several students on spring break in Broward collapsed and nearly died after they snorted cocaine that had been laced with fentanyl. Turns out this was not an isolated case. On the very same day of that incident in Wilton Manors, a total of 34 people overdosed in Broward County. It happens every day in Broward, which seems to be the epicenter of the fentanyl epidemic in our state, and we want to talk about it with Dr. Teri Stockman. She is the chair of the surveillance team of the United Way of Broward's Commission on Behavioral and Health and Drug Prevention. She tracks drug use trends, recommends action to the commission. Dr. Stockman, good afternoon now. Glad to have you with us. Can you hear us? We're having trouble hearing you.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
I've got you now loud and clear. So tell us, what the heck is going on in Broward? I mean, the last year that figures were available, nearly 650 people overdosed and died. mainly from fentanyl. I mean, this is an astounding number. I'm sure you're troubled by it.
Oh, yes, yes. It's been a lot of new psychoactive substances that are manufactured or synthetically made in a laboratory and then bought, through the dark web or on the internet, depending on whether the compound has been scheduled in the United States as illegal or not.
Yeah. Well, according to BSO and Wilton Manors Police, it was just a 21-year-old kind of run-of-the-mill drug dealer who allegedly sold the cocaine with the fentanyl to these 6 young people, 4 of whom were West Point cadets and came close to dying a few days ago. But you talk about this coming in from the dark web. I mean, how would somebody buy it on the dark web?
They just can get on the internet and they can purchase these things. And then it's very cheap. It's cheaper than the drug itself. So many other street drugs besides cocaine are laced or contaminated with fentanyl and fentanyl analogs and other opioid type substances.
Right.
So your methamphetamine, your cocaine, your ecstasy, almost everything can be contaminated.
Well, we have seen over the last many years that China, for a long time, was a source of these illicit drugs, often, impure and dangerous. But the Postal Service, the DEA, have been cracking down. Are they still coming in from China and abroad?
Oh, yes. What happens when one drug gets scheduled in the United States, then the chemists in the other parts of the world just move on to a analog where they just simply make a small change in the structure of the compound, and therefore it's no longer illegal.
Wow.
And they use that. So we should be checking on these different analogs every 3 to 6 months.
Doctor, I have to say, I did see the front page story in the Sun Sentinel. I'm glad the media is paying more attention, and we're paying attention this morning to this fentanyl crisis. I think crisis is not an overstatement. But I do not hear a lot of political leaders in South Florida and Broward County saying, we've got to address this issue immediately. Where are political leaders, the mayor, commissioners, so forth?
I think we have to do this on a federal level to schedule the compounds. So it takes it's a long time. We're always behind the curve, if you will, in the toxicology laboratory because legislation takes time. And by the time you legislate something, then the chemists have created a whole new, brand new compound.
Right. No, I understand. Dr. Stockman, do you think that the Broward Sheriff's Office and other police agencies in Broward County are doing a good job of trying to ferret out the fentanyl trade and dealers who are using it in cocaine?
Oh, yes, I think so. Especially, part of our United Way Commission is that we have that surveillance committee. We meet once a month and we talk about emerging trends and new drug trends. The Attorney General just announced a drug called ISO, and that actually is a non-fentanyl but opioid synthetic compound. So that's very potent.
Yeah. Doctor, we know from various reports, of course, we've seen reports from the upper Midwest, from Kentucky and Ohio, West Virginia, where some of these communities in those states have just been, decimated by drug use, by opioids, and we have seen reports about how police and EMTs go in with Narcan. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. Explain how that works, how you treat somebody who is OD'd.
Okay, when there's something called the receptors in the body, and the drug, it's kind of like a lock and key. So the drugs will fit into the receptor and have the effect. Now, if you can block that receptor with another drug, then the fentanyl can't get onto the receptor to have its effect. And that's how Narcan works. It blocks that receptor so that your fentanyl can't get on there, and it immediately reverses it. You'll see someone who is almost unconscious given Narcan, and they'll be immediately aroused.
Yeah, it's an amazing antidote. Just briefly tell us, it's a little surprising but very pleasant to know, very good to know, that the United Way of Broward is so deeply involved in this issue. How is the United Way involved in trying to track and stop drug use?
Well, as I said, we meet once a month. I chair that meeting. Anyone is invited to attend. It's a virtual meeting, and it is a broad cross-section of the community as far as epidemiologists, people from Department of Health, toxicologists, treatment providers, hospital personnel, and we all share what we're seeing in Broward County. And then we can go to the commission and say, this is what's going on. And the commission then has another committee that can go and do education, do legislation. So we have different prongs of how to handle the problem. Yeah. And we have really good communication amongst all those different various groups.
Yeah. Well, thanks to you, to the commission, to the United Way of Broward for doing this really critical work, and we hope you get a handle on this fentanyl epidemic that we are seeing. Dr. Stockman, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back. If you missed part of our show or want to watch it again, you can go to the This Week in South Florida podcast, scan this QR code with your smartphone, and it will take you right to the This Week in South Florida section of local10.com. Thanks so much for being with us today. Remember, as always, stay informed, get involved. Have a great Sunday.